Okay, so I am well, Cardinal. How are you?
I am well, Captain. I have had an exhausting week. I'm not going to deny. I'm doing well now.
That's
And I
just
will
work.
say this, for anyone that listens, every once in a while, you're in a job, and the job is going to ask you to put in more than 40 hours per week. And you're going to do it because it's the right thing to do. Because the job needs it.
Yep.
So,
It does, but I will counter your pontifical statement there, Cardinal, by a mercenary cat statement saying, "You never do anything for free." I know it's mercenary, but nevertheless.
well, certainly don't let them take advantage of you.
Yeah.
But just as a question of professionalism, sometimes the job has to be done on time and done right.
Yeah.
And it's going to take you 45 hours.
Yeah, that's where it is. It's the question of professionalism rather than being just a day employee.
Yeah. And of course, you do have to be compensated for your work. This is true. But hopefully that's not the thing that's motivating you.
Yeah, hopefully not. So that kind of leads directly into one of my first talking points with you. I got a number of them. Just to catch up with you certainly, but the Silmarillion, the article on transhumanism, and this other idea that I was thinking today, which is about electronics in general. Oh, and then also the question of Tiamat, the all-devourer, which I want to talk about too, if we can.
That one you may have to educate me on.
I'm going to start with the computer thing. Okay, so you and I were grew up, not to reveal any ages, because the cat never really reveals that. I'm 9 lives, baby.
Yeah, I don't know which one of your lives you're on right now. And the church is forever.
The church is forever. But we grew up in an era where it was sort of a pre-internet, pre-game, even pre-console world.
Yes.
And I know that we spent plenty of time playing games. I remember way back when we first started playing Bard's Tale and Dungeons and Dragons and other games like that. We spent plenty of time certainly doing that, and television and Atari, and so we had our fill of it. But I don't think you and I could be guilty of growing up or being young people in an era that had all immersive games, VR, fantastic graphics, games that were online instead of in the real world. We just didn't grow up in that.
Like right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Like right now?
This is reality. What are you talking about? This isn't personal.
Oh, sorry.
Jeez, man. Come on. So anyway, what was it?
Not a distraction to your point, though, because I do understand what you're saying.
So how then does a generation that didn't grow up with that deal with or help a younger generation through a generation that has grown up with that? I mean, immersive. Because growing up for us, it wasn't all rosy. Admittedly, we did stupid things, and we played plenty of video games, and we got in trouble, obviously.
We went to the hospital a couple of times.
Yeah. But we also learned about social interaction to a certain degree. We learned about what we like to entertain ourselves in the real world and not. We learned how to deal with family members. We read, we studied things. We worked puzzles and games in the physical world. We learned sports if we learned sports. We learned girls if we learned girls. Musical instruments if we learned musical instruments. So we learned all these things that were physical and in the actual incarnate world. Now, I'm not saying this is everybody, but it seems ubiquitous that young people today have grown up since the 2000s, early 2000s, without any of that. None of it. In fact, they've grown up with a substitute of that in the virtual world. And now they grow up who's in their 20s. They go to a job. They come home from the job. They play video games. They sleep. They get up. They go to a job. They come home. They play video games. And it's this cycle that just does not quit. And when they're not playing video games, they're watching videos about playing video games. Or they are going to bed in a bed with sheets that have video games on them. Or they're wearing video game pajamas with video game toys and plush objects next to them. And in the morning, they're drinking their drinks out of video game-themed cups. And they're talking about video games with other kids. And they're talking at all. Et cetera, et cetera. Mind the plates in the background. Sorry.
I hear the music of the plates.
So you understand what I'm getting at here?
Yes, I do. And you're worried that it is somehow dehumanizing.
Well, I haven't gotten to there yet in this conversation. Right now, I'm just noticing that the generation since the 2000s has grown up in an ubiquitous world of video games. And also of chat, too, because my daughter does some chat.
Yeah, a lot of people do it all the time.
Yeah. And I haven't yet in this conversation made the claim that it's all bad. I'm just saying it's ubiquitous. So then the next stage is it bad?
Well, we got to address the fact that we are biased by what we went through.
Right.
And the inherent tendency of anyone to think that their way was the best way.
Yeah, I recognize that.
I am pretty sure that it's going to lead to a different result. Like, there will be a whole different understanding of human relationships between people.
Okay.
I have not observed it as being healthy for people. I haven't seen this. I've seen a lot of lonely, isolated, and unhappy people.
Well, yeah, the whole phenomenon of incels.
But I'm not sure that my memory is right that we had fewer of us who were isolated. My memory is we did not.
Yeah.
But could it be that my memory is glossing over things?
And yes. Could it be that our present state is simply approaching a certain age, 50, where kids these days are just dead?
Well,
I mean, there's that.
Got to get off my lawn.
Yeah, get off my lawn.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't want to fall off the edge.
Don't fall off the edge. No, but I mean, there's that. I take that into account. That possibility. And I also take into account the possibility that there can be great good that comes out of a lot of these things, chat and games. Let's just do this. Let's just say technology, because for the sake of swiftness, I don't want to keep saying video games and chat and all these other things that occur.
I think technology is the better choice.
Yeah, I'm gonna lump them in. I'll lump them in the term technology. So a lot of good can come out of it. This, for instance. Although this is reality.
Absolutely. I actually am a Cardinal, and you actually do have a cat head.
Meow. And also the connection over distance, the engagement in something that is truly beautiful and adventurous, communication of stories and knowledge that we never would have had before, because we wouldn't have access to so vast an array of books and movies and the like. So there's a lot of good that can come out of it. I think friendships can be born. I think people can have connections to other people through the media. Like I know you and I did. When we were growing up, there were some times that were tough when we actually learned how to interact with each other through Bard's Tale and the Dungeons and Dragons games.
Yeah.
To a great degree.
Or shooting each other with some of the Intellivision games that we did.
Right, yeah, precisely. So there is that possibility of connections. I don't discount that and say it's all bad. But what I do notice is that on the one hand, it's ubiquitous, seemingly so, unless we're like living in an undeveloped part of the world.
No, we live in the real world.
And that there's an exorbitant amount of time that is spent on technology. I talked with my daughter just tonight this afternoon about the fact that she spent an entire day in the chat room, like from sun up to sundown. Felt bad about it afterwards. Felt terrible.
She decided that you were like spawn of Satan because you told her that?
Oh, no. She told me. She recognized it. She knew that she had done something that she really regretted, and had this buyer's remorse afterwards. My point was rather that she spent the entire day on it, and whether she regretted it or not, or was the spawn of Satan, or I don't know. She regretted it. She recognized something had happened that she didn't like. So not only is technology ubiquitous, but it seems that there's a great deal of time spent on them. And as long as time is spent on them, for good or ill, time is not spent on other things. So that means that people that do spend an exorbitant amount of time in technology it's not that they're doing something evil, it's that they're not doing certain goods that could benefit them in the future. You know, Jordan Peterson always talks about how sacrifice is giving up something in the present for the future. So for instance, you take cello lessons, which you hate, but you take them so that in the future you can play the cello. You sacrifice time reading something in order that in the future you become an expert on it. So on and so forth. So you develop certain skills now that are onerous, but will pay off in the future. And that's maturity, Peterson said. So part of the problem of technology is not that you're doing something evil, it's that you're not spending that same amount of time doing things that are beneficial now and in the future. I mean, I think about technology and I think of all the good things that comes out of it. What does it have to offer for the future? I don't know.
Well, even brought to that point, it's still a neutral thing, Cat. In all things that we do, whether or not it be this technology world or sometimes even like cello or ballet, it's when you start seeing yourself as a god to your world. And I don't just mean like some electronic world. I mean, you start seeing that your will rules over everything. Then the technology becomes an enabler of you doing evil. Not just you not doing good, but you doing evil. You know what? This is the Icarus story.
How so?
It's the Icarus story. When Icarus used the wings that his father Daedalus gave him to challenge Apollo, say, I can do this magnificent thing. Now I am a god. And of course he's cast down right away because natural laws have no pity.
I agree with you.
Then they quote something else on that. So here we are with this electronic world, and it has this capacity for many good things. The technology we use is remarkable. But anytime we give into it, and we give into the temptation to say, and now I rule, we're asking to be struck down.
So then, I totally agree with you. But here's the...
Yeah, the chat room gives you the ability to say, and I can rule out, I can ignore everything that is actually in my house, or in the yard in front of my house, because I'm here instead.
Or I can say things in the chat room with anonymity.
Yes. Which you would not do if you looked people in the face.
Because you aren't going to get punched in the schnoz.
Sorry.
You saw it coming, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And he dodged.
In reality, this would not happen in reality.
And here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. If we are to be critical about certain things, I'm more critical about video games than I am about chat, simply because I don't do chat. But in video games, we get trained to do certain things by doing that action repeatedly. And there's been numerous talk about whether or not video games form our actions in the real world. I don't think they do in one sense, because I don't think that, people that play video games know they're video games. They aren't going to be like, oh, I can go and chop somebody up with a chainsaw in the real world because I can do it in the video game. People aren't going to think that, generally. So I don't think that...
No, unless you're already outside wrong with you.
Yeah, you're already kind of on the edge of being a psychopath already. So I don't think video games do that. What I do think they do is I think that they train a person into thinking that the world is limited to the narrative of the game. So, for instance, like any object in the real world, our imagination can work on it and do all sorts of things, almost an infinite amount of things. You take a coffee cup, and we can imagine all sorts of things that a coffee cup could do, and it's very vast. It allows us to spread our imagination all over the world. In a video game, that coffee cup doesn't do anything at all, or it has a specific purpose according to the narrative of the game. And so we get trained to thinking that certain things they're locked into being X or Y or Z. And I wonder if that doesn't also...
You come to assume...
Go ahead.
You come to assume that the world has boundaries, because the game always has boundaries. As opposed to thinking that I am in a world where I can keep going. I have freedom here.
But boundaries imaginative.
Yes, imaginatively.
And second, I think you end up seeing other human beings or talking to about other human beings in the way that you're trained to do in the game. So I guess you could say that when you start using bad language about women, for instance, in the game, like in this game, I won't totally advocate the use of this game. You start using bad language about women in this game repeatedly. In the real world, it becomes easier and easier to do so. But more to the point is when you're doing online games with other people and you're talking a certain way to them and you're using foul language and you're saying things to another person, you get to a point where you're doing that even when you're not in the game. And so it does kind of train you in a certain way towards action. So I guess you could say it does evil in that sense. But it doesn't by its nature do so. I mean, it doesn't have to do that.
I suppose it removes the real world penalty of doing it wrong.
The penalty, yeah.
When you're time for it. I mean, if we were to go about cursing, talking to women as if all of them were prostitutes,
right?
In the real world, you pay for that real fast.
Very fast. Again, you get blipped in the nose.
Yes, you do. But in the electronic world, you don't pay for it that fast. I mean, even if you're restricted to just, say, a chat room, the worst that happens is you get kicked out of the chat room.
Right.
And you might emotionally think, oh, it's so terrible, I should never have been kicked out.
Yeah.
But you didn't get your teeth knocked out.
Yep. And
you don't really learn what your real limits are either.
Right, your physical limits. Yeah. Because you're not testing yourself physically in the game, really. Aside from like how long can I stay in a sweaty room that smells like salami and push a button repeatedly. My endurance test.
Perhaps the test not worth doing.
This is like a Milgram's 37 or something.
It's not quite like the test we did when I was doing martial arts. Like,
I didn't know.
How many push-ups can you do and sit-ups can you do before you black out?
Yeah. And back to your Icarus story, I think to some degree it does make a person think that they can achieve things in the real world, though they really can't. A sort of naivete. It feeds into the hubris, like, I can take you, man. To a certain degree, I think it feeds into that, especially for young people who aren't engaging in things like hiking and football and soccer and arts and crafts and shooting a gun or shooting a bow and arrow or learning an instrument or kissing some pretty dame. They're not doing it. Or why? Yeah. Go do the windows. Go do the lawn. Right after I beat this boss.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, it's definitely that's another sin of omission, I guess. It's not allowing young people or even adults to test their limits anymore in the physical world. And why would you have to? The physical world's a pain in the ass.
Yes, it is. Things like cold snaps, common blizzards, and the power goes out.
And you gotta shovel your wall. And you gotta fire the fireplace.
I was having a conversation with our mother, which most people might not think that a cat and a cardinal could come from the same mother, but we
She's
did.
a very interesting person.
We were discussing in California right now a number of people who have been freezing to death, waiting for the state to rescue them.
Yeah.
And she said that she would break up the furniture in the house and put it in the fireplace before she let that happen.
Yeah.
A lot of people just don't think that.
No, they don't.
They don't think, I need to take care of myself. I must make the sacrifice.
But you see, that's what I'm getting at. On the one hand, it takes away the imaginative ability that can think. Furniture. Wood. Use that. And it also, I think, takes away the testing of limits that previous generations were forced to do. I mean, imagine people that lived through the Great Depression and how much our grandmother preserved food, saved food, found ways to save various objects for use later, gelled everything. I mean, remember tomato asp? That was like a way
Those little ways were seemed crazy by the 1980s.
Oh, yeah. But back in the day, when she was growing up in the 1920s and 30s, that's how you survived. Do people now know how to survive?
Well, there's a number of people in California that froze to death waiting for someone to rescue them.
Yeah, learning the hard way.
I find that sad.
Yeah, here's another thing that gets me. I was reading this study somewhere that say exposure to the human face is one of the ways that we learn how to do our own emotions, control our own emotions, develop our mind, all that kind of stuff, because we're always judging the reactions of the human face to our words and our actions and our own facial expressions. And so we end up judging even our appearance, like, am I beautiful, am I handsome, judged on how I'm seeing the human face and exposure to the human face and types of human faces. How often do people who are in chat rooms or playing video games see a human face?
Yes, and I suppose even if there are faces there, there's always the possibility that it's not a real face.
Yeah, now we're going into another realm here, that whole like AI thing, and that's scary. But exposure, just sheer exposure, daily exposure to a human face. So this is an argument I've used in my advocacy for face-to-face teaching rather than electronic teaching. Now, I know that online teaching is seeing you in the face, right, through a video.
Online teaching is such a catastrophe. Teacher, I hated it.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a catastrophe. That's a good word for it. When you're in a classroom, you're always registering a human face-to-face contact. Either the face of the professor or the face of your peers or the face of that pretty girl that you like in the class. You're always registering another face. You don't do that when you're in a video game, certainly, but you don't do that even in a classroom. You're always looking at yourself. Very rarely do you look at other people. It's a phenomenon that's been documented that most people, when they are in a video chat, either have their cameras off and are not paying attention, or if they have the camera on, they're looking at their own hair and how they are responding.
Yes, I have noticed that too, even with myself. I have to be in these video chats. I frequently look at whether or not I'm looking like a doofus.
Yeah, well, naturally. Nobody wants to look like a schmo.
But it's weird that you keep wanting to check as if it had changed.
Yeah, like, am I a schmo now? Am I a schmo now?
What about now? No?
It's like the goldfish memory, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so it's almost like the technology world strips the human face. Which I find, we see this over and over again in science fiction movies. How often do you see in those spooky science fiction movies, faceless automatons? Take away the human face. Which leads into the next issue that I have with it. And sort of crossing over to that transhumanism article. How much of our growing addiction and reliance upon technology, especially online stuff and video games and chat, leaves us open to becoming product?
Well, certainly there's a strong incentive for those who control the technology to make us into a product. It's much more profitable. And I think that as the transhumanism thing goes forward, it's not going to turn people into superheroes.
No.
Because that doesn't give profit to those who own the technology.
Yeah, transhumanism, for anybody who doesn't know, is this idea that humans and technology will merge. Is going to happen. And that the human body is a fluid, what was the term they used? Ape-brain beat sack.
That's a really unpleasant sounding and negative term.
Highly.
And I'm presuming it is used by people that say we need to replace it with something, as they'll put it, superior.
Yes. This is an article in the American Mind. I forget the author. I'd have to look that up, but it was a great article. And she was, I think the author is a woman, for whatever that means. I think a woman
I don't know what a woman is. I'm not a biologist.
You're a cardinal. I'm a cat. But anyway, the article was one which was outlining sort of the terror of the brave new world we're entering into, and making the point that much of that brave new world was not about the health and the goodness and the happiness of the people that were being translated into whatever they're being translated. It was more about making them into a product, so that they themselves were the thing being sold. Yes, here it is. This is from American Mind. It's called Human Matters, Mary Harrington. Okay. And it's a really bracing read. But I think part of what she was pointing out, rightly so, is that we may have been duped by this whole technology sale thing. So much so that we are no longer buying Microsoft or buying video games or buying Coke. We are the bought and sold. We are the Africa to be exploited. That's kind of scary.
There was a movie made, sort of a dark fantasy movie some years ago. I don't remember the name of it, but the gist of it was that the company that controlled the food of the world was getting people to eat in such a way that they were getting increasingly rich in fat. And every once in a while a person would disappear and be harvested for the fat. Because it was so very valuable.
Are you thinking of Soylent Green?
No, it's much, much more recent than that.
Okay. Because that's people. Soylent Green is people.
You don't say.
Soylent Green is people!
It's actually a very good movie. I don't want to make fun of it.
No, it's a great movie. And it was really scary a few years ago when somebody came up with an energy drink called Soylent. The irony was not lost.
I remember that. It's like, wait, have you never kept up with pop culture?
Don't you people even watch the show?
Yes.
Yeah, that is a theme which shows up frequently in terrifying science fiction movies. So there was a series that came out recently on Amazon, 2-3 years ago, called Altered Carbon. I don't know if you saw it.
No, I don't.
The idea was that the human body could be grown in fats, and the human consciousness would be uploaded to a satellite and then downloaded when you needed it to this new body. Or if you were not so wealthy, just downloaded directly into this body. Like when you want a new body. So say you wanted to be a woman. For a day, you just downloaded your consciousness to a woman, and then a day later download it back up to your regular body. Or if you wanted to be healthy, or if you wanted to be athletic, you would rent a body, or you would purchase a body permanently. And the very, very wealthy would upload their consciousness to a data bank that was a satellite, so that if they ever died, they could download immediately and be reincarnated into a new clone that they had vats full of these clones. And it was a detective movie about a murder that occurs, where the guy who hires the detective is the guy who was murdered. His previous body gets executed, and he's trying to find out who did that. And it works out all these really horrible possibilities if that technology were ever developed. Well, it's almost like we're on the horizon of it to a certain degree.
It's funny. It's like we're barreling towards things, and everybody knows it's a bad idea, but it doesn't stop.
Yes. There was a ship. Yeah.
And I'm sure we can get past this iceberg.
Yeah, right. Iceberg. Part of altered carbon, which is also interesting, is that the very, very rich were able to access this technology. And they made money off of the less rich who wanted access to this technology. So it does raise this question again. If we have the technology to translate human consciousness, if transhumanism becomes true, do we really think that it's going to become a universal accessed facility? It absolutely would not.
And what's more, as with all the technology, those who are very, very rich would control it. I was working with a lot of instrumentation and machines this week that just kept breaking for no logical reason whatsoever. Can you imagine what would happen if you were transferring your technology and the instrument broke while your mind was being... And what about those who control the technology? Could they put the glitch in there so that you just don't transfer?
Or a virus.
I hear that happened with Twitter.
You did what with your computer?
You know what I mean? Your account just gets blocked.
Oh, yes.
So you can't transfer.
Yeah, there's like...
You see what I mean?
Okay, you and I, again, we grew up in an era before digital this and digital that, streaming this and streaming that. I mean, people are streaming all over the place now. But in our day, back in our day, when the kids were... Everything was better. No, we had a physical copy of something. So there's a joke in the movie Men in Black where the two characters are walking through this gallery of stuff. And the Tommy Lee Jones character says to the Will Smith character, he looks at this little white cube and says, well, looks like I got to buy the White Album again. And it's a great line because it's a little inside joke about where things are going. Streaming MP3 music had just come on the scene. And those of us who had bought the White Album in an LP form, and then bought it in a tape form, cassette form, and maybe had bought it in a 6-track form, and then bought it in a CD form, we're now having to buy it in a streaming form. But this was going to make it so you didn't have to carry stuff around. You could have more access to more music. You would be able to keep all your library in one spot. Guess what?
At a certain point, having the physical album is worth so much more.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, problems with streaming. Okay. Streaming music and streaming videos. First off, it's so damn much you can't decide. Second, it's curated. So those who control it sometimes alter the data. Sometimes don't even put the data up for you to consume. Sometimes lose the data, so you pay for something and it's gone.
I've had this happen.
Oh yeah. And I'm not talking just about music. I'm talking about data in a streaming form. If we move to a transhumanism, where, for instance, consciousness is going to be uploaded or whatever it is, or technology is available, what's going to assure you that you're actually going to have that happen? Or that the data isn't going to be lost or whatever?
Or that you would come back as you are and not modified in a way someone else sees better.
Yeah, modified. I love that word. Modified.
Well, if it's transhumanism, it's all about modifying yourself, isn't it?
No, you're right. I just love the word. Because you think about somebody coming back and be like, I think I've been modified. You know, there's that great game that you lucked me onto called Data Sex. And I followed that series. Great series. But one of the points they make in there over and over again is that this stuff can go horribly wrong, catastrophically wrong.
Yes, and catastrophically, even when people are doing it with the best intentions.
Yeah. And that those behind it are not altogether altruistic.
Well, no one in the corporate world ever is really altruistic that way. Corporate virtue isn't the same thing. I mean, if you ever hear of a company doing what seems like a very noble thing, it may be a noble thing, but that's never why they're really doing it. And they're not necessarily doing it for nefarious reasons either. They're sometimes doing it because it's good PR.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's not precisely virtuous, but it'll do.
Yeah. And you're helping kids with leukemia. Or whatever it is.
But Mr. Beast, who's a YouTuber, helped 1,000 people get their sight back. And he just delivered 20,000 shoes to shoeless kids in Africa. And I think that's good. Those are good things to do. Is it also because it promotes his brand? Yes. But it wound up doing good. But corporate restraints don't make you do what is good for other people. You're not doing it for other people. And so you could do what is evil just as easily.
Yes. Yeah. You know, my son raised the issue today. This is my young 6th grade son. He raised the issue today. He said, I wonder if we can actually come to a point where we can control our dreams. And actually his friend said that. And my son said, we already do. Now I don't know what he meant by that, but it got me to thinking about this. Dreams are the bulk of imagery, or come from the bulk of imagery that is either spiritus moonbeam, that is from this world spirit that we all tap into as humans, and or they are influenced by the images that we see, especially on a repeated basis. So if we had, say, some form of technology that kept inserting the same imagery into our mind until it got into our subconscious, couldn't we alter the state of our dreams consciously? Or couldn't others alter the state of our dreams?
That's the part that troubles me. That if others are doing it, they're doing it for their own reasons, which may not be at all entwined with what is good for you.
Right. And it also makes you, well, the concept of your freedom becomes a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah.
How much are you motivated by your free choice? How much are you motivated because you've had this recurring dream that's been planted in your head, going back to the idea of being modified. You know, it doesn't have to be a virus planted in. Could be an earworm, you know, a despair worm.
Yeah. That is a thought that has gone through my mind for years now. The question of whether or not free will is as absolute as some of our philosophers have said it is. And I ultimately came to the conclusion that it is not.
Yeah, I agree.
It can be taken from you.
Can be taken, can be influenced, can be modified. So our free will is frequently the result of things that we see or hear or experience in our culture.
Yeah. And you might not even recognize that you think you're choosing something freely but you have already biased yourself to say, out of this range of choices, and say, these are the only possible choices, so I'll choose freely from these. But not recognize that your choices may have been restricted to other people.
Yeah.
False issue. That's called the magician's choice, by the way. Have you ever heard of this?
No, tell me.
The magician's choice is a trick that magicians will do. He would, for example, have 2 boxes that are put up, and he would say to you, and now you must pick one of these 2 boxes. And you pick one of the boxes. And he knocks it off the table and gives you the other one. And you think that you've gotten the box because the one you chose got knocked away. But if you had the other box, he would have picked it up and given it to you, and you would have gotten the same box anyways. So you see, your choice was an irrelevant choice.
Oh, that's beautiful. So that's what they're talking about, or trying to talk about in the Matrix. Not to great degree.
I saw that movie.
Yeah, I know. And the third one is kind of shite. But it does try to deal with that sort of issue of introducing choice. And certainly the first one says we introduced the question of choice because the original program was so poor that people knew they were in a program. So we introduced choice and suffering. And then they developed that in the third one, which is they try to, but it's kind of. But the point being is the choice that is in the Matrix is not really choice. It's just the illusion of choice. And that's dealt with elsewhere. You have other movies and games that try to bring that issue up. Is your choice and your personality, is it really you, or is it something that's been influenced by something else? Classic example. I was listening to a really good program on the bombing of Dresden the other day during World War II. Horrible business. Hard to fathom just how bad it was, and just how poor a decision that was. But it was utterly suppressed during the war. I mean, people knew it had happened in the States, but not much. And Germans knew, but even they didn't really know the full extent outside of the city. For generations afterwards, nobody knew this, and we kept choosing basically to say we're in a righteous war, this is a righteous war, everything about it was righteous, and to not even give the possibility that Germany had some cause for doing what it did. Partly because national pride, but also because we didn't want to admit that the philosophy that had led to Nazism was attractive. So attractive that people in America, like Henry Ford, subscribed to it. So we cut out anything that we did, or yeah, that's right, Mr. Papa Kennedy, which secret. But yeah.
Sorry, I'm not supposed to say that.
Yeah, don't say that too loud, Cardinal. You'll be defrocked.
Sorry.
But the point being is that people for generations were choosing to see the war as our side all good, and the other side is completely negative. And partly because it was controlled information, controlled knowledge of what had actually occurred. Now, I still think that there's a great deal of righteousness on the part of the Allies, but it doesn't mean that they were totally righteous in everything.
Yeah, now I understand what you're saying. You're not saying, the Nazis were actually secretly good.
No.
That's not what's going on here. This is the question that things are more complicated than the simplistic myth we talk about with it. And things don't come up out of nowhere either. Bad things don't come up out of nowhere.
And if you expose yourself constantly to a medium or a message that repeats over and over again a theme, wouldn't you end up seeing the world only as that theme wanted to dictate to you?
As if it was, for example, North Korea?
Yeah.
Then I would say that the answer is clearly yes.
Yeah.
And it could be subtly and quietly done, bit by bit, until you never even noticed that it had happened.
Didn't even notice it had happened. Right. And the terminology you used didn't even question why it was being used. If I can use a classic example without getting in too much trouble. I was watching Ken Burns' Civil War the other day, the opening of it with my son, who had gone to various schools where they tried hard to raise decent kids. And they did a fairly good job. But we'd been in and out of different schools, and they all taught this. So in Ken Burns' documentary, he reads directly from letters and statements of characters in the 1800s. Many of them contain the N-word.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time uttering it even here. And my son said...
I think it's not appropriate to.
No, it isn't. But my son said they used the N-word. He was kind of shocked. And he said, what does that word mean? And I had to explain to him that the word in and of itself is a Latin word that means black. But that there are a lot of images, symbols, words, that have connected to them something so horrible that we have a hard time seeing them in any other way but as horrible. So two levels were going on here. One was that this word had become associated in America with such a horrible event, namely the peculiar institution of slavery. That and the ongoing Jim Crow laws afterwards and violence in the South. That to use the word now was inappropriate, insulting to people, dangerous, difficult. It has with it a stigmata that it did not have before.
Sorry. Stigmata is my business.
That's right. Sorry. I didn't mean to overstep my secular level. But
I'll give you a stigmata.
But the other thing was, at the other level, was that people have tried so hard to get rid of that word, excise it from our society, that we can't even say the word now in private company. We were totally alone, Ian. We have a hard time saying it. That's conditioning to such a degree that people don't even question and can't talk about certain issues. Words, images. I know there's a great deal more.
The progression of that is that after a certain amount of time, nobody will even know what the word is.
Nope. May not even know that it exists. So the long-term point is that there could be a conditioning in the human mind, vocabulary, whatever, phantasmagoria, that could condition us not only to not do certain things or do certain things, but not even know that there's an alternative. And part of me worries that that's where technology is headed. You see, it does come around.
Yeah. As if, back to the point we were talking about whether or not you accept a world with borders. Because the game had borders.
The game had borders, yes, right. And are you recognizing that it has borders? And are you willing to go beyond the borders in order to really discover something? And understand the truth? Or is it just too much effort because, hey, point and click?
Well, in many ways, that's the attitude that kept people from ever exploring across the Atlantic Ocean.
Yes. Or it's the same attitude that kept people from examining certain possibilities that are too terrifying. So, for instance, I was just watching a program on the great flood of Lake Missoula.
Oh, yeah.
It's tremendous. Only recently has it started to take grip in the scientific community. We're talking the last 20 years.
What, did it actually happen?
Yeah, that actually happened.
No. I mean, it's not accepted that it happened?
It was not accepted until about the 2000s.
Huh. I did not know that.
It was proposed in 1910. The guy was laughed out of the colleges. His career was ruined. nobody thought it was at all real until about the 1970s, when people began saying, well, wait a minute, he might have had a point. And still, there was this huge pushback. This could not have happened. And it took about 30 years, and roughly around the 2000s, people were like, yeah, that's what happened. Called catastrophism.
Yeah, and there's a great deal of evidence for it.
There is. And catastrophism really began around 2000, 2001, about the same time we were attacked on September 11th, by the way. The thought being then not just that glacial Lake Missoula had scoured the crap out of the western part of the U.S., America, but that other huge catastrophes could be responsible for forming the world. So like Ice Age Earth. Or the
that was another theory that was definitely not accepted when it was first proposed.
Or the death of the dinosaurs by this massive meteor that might have occurred several times in history. Or the collision of the moon with Gaia, Earth with Gaia to form the moon.
I was going to say, because moon never did collide with Gaia.
No. But Gaia and the Earth collided together, two massive planets, apparently.
It's funny, I was thinking about that just this morning. In my imagination, I was speaking to a bunch of people from the 1600s as scientists, and they were asking, well, is the Earth actually older than 6,000 years? You have no idea.
I've met that Adam. It's weird, strange, a little scary.
Well, running into people that hew to the 6,000-year-old Earth timeline?
It's very prominent among Protestant groups, especially. You wouldn't know about that, Cardinal, I know. But the Protestant
within the church.
Yes. Protestant groups frequently, especially the evangelicals, they have calculated the age of the Earth according to mathematical equations in the Bible. So they add up the ages of the various people mentioned in the Bible, and that's how they get the age of the Earth. And they do not recognize that the Bible was actually a creation over time of various stories put together by the Sanhedrin in the 6th century.
Not dictated by the Archangel Gabriel.
Precisely. Now this may be completely American, but it's kind of stuff.
Well, even if that specifically is American, there is a similar phenomenon everywhere you go. A kind of pig-headedness that refuses to look at the world and see enormous things as beautiful. The actual age of the Earth, the actual history of the Earth is a beautiful thing.
Sure.
So much more elaborate than what any one person could have dreamed up.
Yeah, well, sure. And there's a certain, I don't know, beauty or thrill in seeing something tremendous, like watching a tornado or looking at a supernova, or the cataclysm of tsunami. It's tremendous.
As long as you're high enough on a hill,
as long as you're high enough,
you're actually pretty impressive.
You're in a shelter, and therefore the tornado lives. But I think that's why a lot of people refuse to accept certain ideas, is because they're too tremendous, they're too overwhelming. And I got to get back to my subject again. I know I keep harping on this, but as long as you stay in a sanitized world, accepting of these tremendous powers that roam the earth, so to speak, is almost impossible. You can't accept that you can get 18 feet of snow in the mountains of California as long as you're diddling around inside of a video game world.
Yes, because it never snows in California.
No, and you can always get up and get Cheetos whenever you feel like it, and the house is warm. You've got soda pop and Red Bull, so you're set. Now, I don't mean to make light of it, but I do make light of it because there is a certain lack of intellectual elasticity that allows a person to actually entertain the possibility that our Earth is much more vast than they thought. And thus they get blindsided, they get duped, they get caught with their pants down. And are more prone, I think, to believe whatever they're fed to them in terms of stories and plots and whatever.
and are more prone to accept despair.
There we go to it.
I met this last weekend, in fact, with someone that was talking about how incredibly overpopulated the city that I live in is. The whole state is overpopulated. And I said, look, you drive 30 minutes to the west of where we are right now. There's no one. It's just rolling hills, forests, rivers. You would not see another single human soul.
No.
You can only believe that your world is incredibly overpopulated if you never walk out of your apartment
exactly.
complex.
Your little suburban area, whatever it is.
Your infinite city where everybody's clustered into you.
It's like because you never bothered to read the Malthusian ideas, and so you're unfamiliar with what those are, because that's too difficult to read that. And when you start looking at what's actually happening, it's scary, because it goes back to one of the problems I think that technology is giving us. Technology prevents you from doing a lot of things, good things with your time, and one of the things it prevents, certainly with guys, it prevents you from learning how to deal with a woman. What a woman wants, what a woman really is, and all the beautiful and difficult and terrifying aspects of sexuality that go into creating a family. Everything from the making of babies to the birthing and raising of babies, all that stuff. Either you get caught completely off guard, or you just have no idea how to begin. So apparently, on the one hand, we've got a rise of incels. Really, it's a term which I don't like. It's young men, especially, who not only are involuntarily celibate, they just don't even think about it anymore. And simultaneously, we've got a drop in the last 30 years of testosterone among men. And now it's almost universally recognized. Every country is in a population tailspin in the world.
Yeah. I think that's technology connected too, but a different technology than the one we've been talking about.
Elaborate on that.
I don't think that would be electronic technology.
Elaborate on that.
If you were to test our drinking water these days, you'll find that anywhere you go, virtually everywhere in the world, they are now richer in hormones than they used to be. Noticeably richer in hormones.
Why?
That is a technology that has come from birth control, both for humans and, curiously, for livestock as well.
You just got cut off. Do you have a mute? Shite. He's out. Okay, so I'm gonna have to pause, because this cannot abide. There's a beverage here. So I just lost my running mate. He's dropped out, and I have to see if I can invite him back in. This is kind of spooky, actually, because we were just talking about something which has global ramifications. Why would he drop out at that point? I mean, let me ask y'all, do you believe in demons? Because if you don't believe in demons and demonic powers, I don't know.
Hello?
Okay, dude. Okay.
I just want to state that is not a problem that happens when you're talking to a person face to face.
Yeah, it's also not necessarily a problem that happens immediately when you're talking about something which is terrifying on a global scale.
Yeah, you think that our internet masters didn't like us talking about that?
There's no way to know.
That's the weird thing. There isn't, is there?
I mean, you can't know. That's another problem of technology. Who's actually watching? Who's behind the curtain? Who are the shadow
You and I
masters?
started talking here because we knew we were being watched in another medium.
Yes. Something that's been documented now for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So
we were here because it seemed it was less likely we were being watched here.
And I still think that's probably the case, but when you start talking on something which is really a dangerous topic, and suddenly your partner is zapped out of existence, I don't know. Like I said,
alarming, isn't it?
It is alarming.
Shall we do the experiment and continue talking again about it?
I think we should. I mean, we need to finish the topic. It has to be finished. But as I asked before you came in, do you believe in demons?
I do.
You know, I would hope you do, being a cardinal.
This is my demon cutter.
So you were bringing up this issue that there's a lot of synthetic chemical in the water supply.
Yes. Synthetic estrogens.
And comes through birth control.
Through birth control. Widely used by humans, widely used in agriculture.
And I was reading or listening to an interview with a woman who has studied this for some time. She's no small cheese. She's one intelligent doctor, and she's done a lot of work on this. So do I just say, she's another quack? I don't think so. I don't doubt that that's the case. But it is in tandem with a rise in entertainment that keeps one glued to the couch.
Well, yeah, I see your point. And that you are getting within your own body by your own repeated actions. No need to have testosterone produced.
No need to have children.
No need for children.
Children take a lot of work. You know, and children take a lot of work, and you have to sacrifice the present for children. That's what Jordan Peterson talks about all the time. But
and they break your heart.
And they break your heart because you love them. So if there is a rise in estrogen in the water, and if through technology, I will say, and if we are glued to the couch by our technology, we don't have to be bothered with all that liquid of life. And we don't have to have our hearts broken. And we don't have to worry about the messiness of raising a family, or of having a spouse, or of entertaining the possibility of death of people that we love. See? Seriously, you and I both know that that's a lot of work and a lot of pain and a lot of heartache. And it's generally accepted because we sacrifice the present for the future. But if you don't need to, if you've got your can of Red Bull and your Cheetos and a couch and the house is warmed, and you've got your GTA, you can go all night.
Death just means somebody disappears next to you, that's all.
It's sad.
They may be back in a second.
Yeah. Or they may take them and make them into food.
Or that.
And who cares? Because ultimately, it's just a physical world. There's no such thing as a spiritual.
I think that would be a sad world if it was actually true.
It'd be terribly sad.
Unfortunately, it's not true.
No, it isn't. But
that is a lie that's being peddled.
This is what I'm getting at, is how often in our technology do we recognize that it is a lie? And how often do we see the alternative? Because even things like religion, Sunday, become co-opted. They're just something we do in order to get it done and get donuts and then go back home and play more GTA. I mean, it's a very cynical view, I know. But it's part of the worry that I have about our technological world. And how do you get out of it?
About religion, that remains the main source of rage that I had at the churches having been closed during the COVID shutdown. I still cannot quite forgive it. And as a cardinal, I have been in confession about this several times. And every time I come back, why did you abandon me?
Yes, right, exactly.
Why?
In my hour of need.
I was going to die, and you locked me out of the church.
And you're not alone in that. And in some ways, I gotta say, thank God for technology during that period, which was imposed upon us by technology, I know. But we were able to use the technology to at least connect with people that shared our views, that were able to help us, bolster us up, things like that. There was that. So I'll give credit where credit is due. But it does lead me to another topic. Sorry, go ahead.
We've said this before, and it must be said, technology is not a bad thing, neither good nor bad. What we're discussing is how the technology is being used. Mm-hmm. And it's being used in a way that seems increasingly towards a perverted world.
Yeah. Yeah, and that does raise an issue which I think Martin Heidegger brings up. I was just reading his question of technology again. And it's raised by Marshall McLuhan, it's raised by Neil Postman. We raised it recently in the Silmarillion episode we did. Most technology we think of as neutral. But the question has to be asked, what if it isn't? Marshall McLuhan says that every technology is an extension of the human body. And it not only enhances the human body, but also makes it weaker. Because we become reliant on the technology. So if, for instance, our calling technology, which is video games and chat and movies, things like that, if that is an extension of the nervous system, we are certainly enhancing our nervous system beyond all previously known capacity. There's no way I could access documents in the Bodleian before the internet. But we're enhancing, but we're also weakening it. Not in the ways we've discussed already, but also in terms of memory, in terms of the desire to actually look things up, in the desire to ask questions that need to be asked. So I'm weakening my nervous system at the same time that I'm improving and extending it. So is technology neutral? All technology. I would hazard it isn't. That if we can approach it with the knowledge that it is not neutral and that some of it is not our friend, it is possible that we can control it or master it rather than it controlling or mastering us. I think, though, that if we look at technology as purely neutral, we end up becoming the slave or patsy of it.
You know what? That is a very good thought, and I'm going to have to admit, because I'm thinking of examples of this right now. I was wrong when I said it was neutral. There are certain technological things that are not your friend. There are, for example, certain drugs that are so addictive that one single grain of it and you're free.
You're hooked. Yep.
You'll go for it forever.
Yes.
For the rest of your life. That's not your friend.
No. That would be a non-friend.
And you know, I've also watched people's personalities change when they got a smartphone.
Yep.
And they stopped looking at things.
Yep.
Except the phone. And they relied on the phone for directions, and then they couldn't remember their way around a city anymore.
Yep.
Maybe that's not good.
Or how often have we seen young people, especially when they're told to get off a video game, get angry and become something totally different than their normal, cheery, happy self.
Yeah, a personality that is suddenly there that's snapped into being.
Here's science. Tell us about dopamine. What is it?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
What is dopamine?
Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It's a chemical that is released between your nerve synapses.
And what normally prompts the release of dopamine?
Well, you have to release dopamine because whenever you have a nerve impulse, the nerve cells need some time to reset.
So is it possible to release dopamine by certain actions and not others?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And does the release of dopamine prompt you to do those actions again and again?
Yes, it can.
Does a
anything that interacts with the the receptors in what's called the reward center or the pleasure center of the brain, you will do it again and again. You will do whatever action gets that chemical released again.
Does a person become to some degree addicted to dopamine release?
Yes, they do. I can also give you a case which is somewhat grossly funny, in a way.
Okay.
When men have an orgasm and you get this tremendous sense of rush of pleasure, that is a highly addictive rush of pleasure. But humans have this interesting reset thing that after you've had an orgasm, you cannot release that chemical any further for about 10 to 15 minutes, which is enough time for the addictive reaction to start fading away. But there is an unfortunate species of marsupial that lives in Australia where when the males hit sexual maturity, their first sexual event is their last sexual event too. Because they go into orgasm and they never stop. They go and go and go for 2 weeks of increasing intensity. Their hair falls out, their teeth falls out, and then they die.
Yeah, that's funny and extreme.
So yes, it can happen. Yes.
Okay. So and
actually,
one would
probably
assume,
weaponized in humans.
and one could assume that there are actions that release more or less dopamine.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm not an expert on what those actions are.
Right. But let's say that there is an activity that does release a huge amount of dopamine into the body. It would make sense then that a person would want to do that action repeatedly.
Yes, that is correct.
And maybe not engage in other activity that doesn't release as much or releases no dopamine.
Again, a reward system would promote that. Yep.
So if you had a technology that released this huge amount of dopamine and was highly addictive because of it, would that technology not kind of enslave you? And wouldn't that technology be a not friend?
Yes, it would.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. You're right from what you said. Not all technology is neutral. And each case we've brought up, it's been the technology that removes your ability to choose freely winds up being not your friend.
Right. You know, I can give a parallel example. Technology is seemingly inert, it's just stuff. But technology is also the coordination and combination of stuff in order to accomplish a task. So our imaginative world can certainly take a coffee cup or anything like that and make it into all sorts of different things. But ultimately, the coffee cup is designed primarily to hold coffee or other liquid matter of one's choosing in the morning. It's not designed to drive us to school. It's not designed to be worn as a codpiece. If one were to try to do that, you'd fail rather badly.
At what point can we make the jump to cell phone?
You see where the trajectory is headed.
Yes, I do.
If, for instance...
When your cell phone now allows you to drink coffee as well.
Alexa, give coffee. And then like some drone comes up and drops coffee out of the sky.
Oh, no, please, no. It is a source of immense satisfaction to me every single morning to make my own coffee.
Yeah, me too.
I do it with a particular ritual every single day.
Okay, so back from my dystopic future. Some technology is designed to do some things that are horrible, and that's all they do. And if they're designed to do a horrible thing and nothing else, like say, incinerate an entire city, would that technology be a good or bad technology?
No, that exact same technology is what makes our eye and launch systems work.
I know. But it's sort of like asking, is what is good for the asteroid also good for the civilians on the Earth?
No. See, that's the thing. Sometimes you get cooperative action and everybody benefits.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes it's a you win, they lose.
Yeah.
Or they win, you lose.
Yep. So again, with our question of technology and transhumanism and all this other stuff that we're noodling around, it is at least a question one needs to ask. Am I dealing with something that is completely neutral and innocuous, or am I dealing with something that could have the potential of great danger for me and my future?
Speaking as a matter of faith, one does have to recognize that it could have been handed to you by demons.
Right? In fact, a friend of mine shared a great article I got to send your way where the character in the article, suggests that the handheld device is exactly that. It's actually a portal into hell. Now, he may be speaking like metaphorically or whatever, but if he's not speaking metaphorically, that's a very big caveat. And if I've combined that with Rene Girard's statement about the demonic, where he says, and I heard this on American Mind the other day, so I give credit where credit's due, the demonic is the normalization of horrors. So when something's horrible and you make it normal, this is the normal. That's the demonic. So is it normal to carry with you a device in your hand that you have to consult every 5 seconds? Is it normal that you look at the device more than you look at human faces? Is it normal that the device feeds you tons of stuff that you don't necessarily need to know and probably shouldn't be looking at? Is it normal that the device releases a huge amount of dopamine for you compared to other things that are real in the world that maybe should be more attended to? These things I don't think are normal, and they're kind of horrible, and yet they've been made normal.
Makes you want to deal with the basic technologies we use with a great deal more caution, doesn't it?
It should.
And to question what else are we keeping in our lives that is abnormal.
Yes. Now, along these lines...
You know what? You could bring that up about food, too.
Sure.
How far have we gotten away from what is normal food? Is it normal to have what looks like a hamburger be made out of protein that was grown in a soy plant?
Chicken Little.
Is Chicken Little normal? That's a very good book. People have never read it. They ought to read, I think it's called The Space Merchants.
The Space Merchants, yes, Paul Anderson.
Chicken Little is cut out of huge vats of grown meat.
And it's a fungus.
Almost slave plantations in Central America.
It's a fungus. But it's a fungus that has consciousness to a certain degree. Which is horrible. And in the story, one of the characters has carved a secret room in the fungus so that he can evade his overlords and have these conversations. It's really stunning. But then science fiction is fascinating, as is fantasy. I think fantasy and science fiction deal with sort of the same issue from different angles. And science fiction in its best form is always talking about the present and where we're headed, which is why I take it so seriously.
Yes. Actually, I gave a quote earlier that's from Robert Heinlein, but I'm seeing it so relevant to the present. The quote I gave earlier in this conversation was, "Natural laws have no pity."
Yeah, have no pity.
That's from the science fiction author Robert Heinlein.
I love that. And that's a great segue into another issue I wanted to raise with you. Natural laws have no pity. If all we see is the natural and never the supernatural, the world is a pitiless, merciless, dark place. And you brought up the issue of faith a couple times, which is your auspice, being a cardinal. But what if the technology that we're dealing with right now has stripped authentic faith away from us as well, and even blocks us from seeing what authentic faith really looks like? So we don't even know that we're doing not faith. We aren't only just doing not faith. We don't even know that we're doing not faith.
Yeah. I will say, and I'm not promoting that there should be greater suffering in the world, but it has been my experience that if you are taking technology that is to make everybody's life always painless and serene, they will never have faith.
No.
And a world without suffering leads to despair.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not advocating that we should create more misery for people.
But
I'm just saying be careful of anything that promises you relief.
Yes, exactly. It's a lie. It's a canard. It's a trap, as Admiral Akbar says. There's a great phrase in Greek. Drasanta pathos, pathai mathos. Drasanta pathos, pathai mathos. The experience or suffering. The experience brings suffering. The suffering brings wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true.
Faith comes with wisdom.
Yep. And you can't have an authentic faith without suffering.
No.
And here's something.
You know, in purely Christian terms, you cannot have Christianity without accepting the crucifixion.
Right.
Is part of your life.
Right. It's like Flannery O'Connor's great story, right? The Church of Jesus Christ without Jesus Christ crucified.
Yes.
You don't need Jesus Christ if you got yourself a good car.
Yeah.
But here's something that I was noodling, and it leads me into my next segue here, my next section. I don't think it's possible for human beings to avoid completely the all-devouring Tiamat. And you asked me to explain that when we started.
I do ask you to explain that. Personally, I mean, I catch the reference to who Tiamat is, but I'm pretty sure that anyone watching this does not.
Tiamat was a Babylonian thing, maybe Akkadian, but a Babylonian deity. She was a huge dragon, sometimes depicted as a giant lion with wings. But she was a goddess who was a saltwater dragon, and she wanted to consume everything with darkness. And she was defeated by the prince god Marduk, who defeats her and cuts her body in two, and thus renders her inert. Now, in Babylonian mythology, so far as I know it, her consort was shredded up and his blood spread over her body and up through humans. So that's Babylonian mythology. But the image here is an image of an all-devouring darkness, which runs in other religions as well. You see it in religion after religion. There's always this image of the chaos pit, or Tartarus, or Tiamat, or the dragon in Revelation, or even, as the author, the critic Bernard Bateau points out, the Red Sea that's parted by Moses, which is another example of the dragon. It's a fascinating connection. I highly recommend the book. I'll send you a copy. It's called Slaying the Dragon by Bernard Bateau. His point is that when the book of Exodus is written, it's actually playing off of tropes that were current at the time. One of the tropes is this all-devouring goddess, a saltwater goddess. And the only way to life was to defeat her and cut her in two and then walk through the two pieces of her body. And that's what happens, of course. And it's the same thing that happens later with the cutting up of birds, and the Spirit of the Lord moves between them. And shows up frequently in other pieces in the Bible. But the point being, both the Bible image and the Tiamat image and the image that shows up over and over again in other religions is an example of something that seems to be a universal human phenomenon despite any age. That is the vision that everything is going to be drowned in despair, darkness. Everything will end in ruin. Nothing you do will last. The natural order of things is destruction. It's like the poem by Byron, Lord Byron, Darkness. She had no need of us. She was the universe. So the vision that the universe goes blindly by in a sort of cold, mechanistic way, and worlds collide and stars blow up and disappear, and everything ends in a cold, static state of inertia. That's the vision of Tiamat.
That's the world of no pity.
That's the world of no pity. That's where natural laws do not care about you, because they're the universe. Why should they care about you? The only thing that we have to combat that is the vision of the bright, light, divine realm defeating that dragon goddess. It's the vision of combating the other mother. It's the vision, as I said in my class today, it's the vision of Gretel shoving the witch into the fire. It's the same thing. So really the main goal in religion, I think, is to combat that dragon. In other words, the whole point of religion, and we'll talk whatever religion, a religion of worth, the point is to try and get us beyond that vision of all-consuming darkness so that we can actually function. You follow?
Yes. Yes. Because otherwise you just lie down and let yourself die.
Yeah, it makes you a nerd. Okay, so for instance, take the Hansel and Gretel story. Why is Hansel and Gretel so full of starvation images? Mom and Dad are starving. The witch is starving and wants to eat Hansel. The kids are so starving that they eat the gingerbread house. The Hansel lays a trail of bread crumbs in order to find his way home, which get eaten by birds. So starvation is like this predominant image in the story. And eventually the rational thinking, calculating part runs out of ideas how to save himself and his feminine side, how to get home. And they are therefore seduced by a fake thing, a fake home, the gingerbread house, which is not nourishing. Even if it's beautiful and smells good, looks good. But that's a trap. Because in the midst of that is a dragon. And that all-consuming dragon can eat him.
When people read the story, they often think, oh, how could you not recognize something's wrong with the gingerbread house?
Yeah.
But I would point out the analogy, do we always gingerbread house when we come upon it? Because the starvation is what we're hungry for.
Right.
It's like, oh, that, no, I want that.
Right. You see the leap, you've made the leap already, that I don't need to spell it out necessarily with breadcrumbs. But I will.
Spelling it out. I am following you.
Okay. The witch imprisons the masculine, rational, coherent side that has run out of ideas. I mean, he's giving up his substance in the third time in the fourth because he's run out of inert white stones, which represent doctrine and rational thought, right? Connect the dots. So he's giving up his very substance to try and find his way home, and once that's eaten, he has no resources left. So he gets imprisoned. He's made inert. And he's going to be consumed by the Tiamat. What saves him is the feminine, conniving, tricky side. The side that gives life into the world, eventually, although she's a child in the story. It's the side of us that is intuitive and connected to magic. Thoth, after all, being a god not only of writing and magic, but also of the night.
Yes, the Egyptian god.
Yes, exactly. And she is the one that not only gives to Hansel the idea that you trick the Tiamat creature with her own images, death, a chicken bone stripped bare by being eaten.
Yes. Starvation.
Right. But also, she's the one that plays dumb in front of Tiamat, and like Vasilisa with Baba Yaga. She asks only certain questions of her, plays dumb, doesn't ask other questions. And eventually, she's able to get the witch to try to do things herself. She's so frustrated. I can't work this oven. And so the witch says, oh, I'll do it. In the same way that Baba Yaga does to Vasilisa, how did you get all these tasks done? My mother's love. And she kicks her out of the house. And in the Hansel and Gretel story, she's booted into the oven by Gretel, who has now learned how to be tricky and survive in the world, the feminine side of the soul. And so she's cast back into the fire from whence she came. Reference to Tolkien, for those of you who are really dumb as a post.
We're actually making quite a lot of references to different things here.
And even the depictions of the oven, they're frequently depicted as a fornio, which is different from a German oven. The fornio is an outdoor oven, rounded, used for cooking bread and pizza.
By the way, it's a forno.
Forno?
Forno, yeah.
Okay, thank you. But the forno is shaped like a pregnant woman. And the casting into the oven is like casting into the birth canal. It's, a pumpkin in the oven. You got biscuits in the oven.
Put a bun in the oven, yeah.
Nothing spells loving like buns in the oven. So the witch is cast back into that birth canal, which represents going back to the origin of our existence, so to speak. You cast that image of despair and darkness back into its original form and say, "Get thee behind me, Satan." You tell it something that causes it to explode or causes it to dance until it dies, whatever. And if we combine the two stories, the thing that's told in the Vasilisa stories, I did this with my mother's love. In other words, I did this with the vision that the world, my mother, is still good. That's religion.
Yes, it's not reason. With reason, you always lose the argument in the end.
Precisely, my young student. You're so damn good. I think I'll punch you in the face just for
That is because I'm a cardinal. The church has many, many years of wisdom.
There. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Faith is not reason. Faith is super reason, I guess. Intuition, I guess.
This is what you meant earlier in that faith that is being handed out these days is not faith.
Yes.
Because it's an argument that's being made.
Right.
You
It's a
don't
gingerbread
win
house.
The argument.
It's a gingerbread house.
Yeah.
It's not the real home.
No. Your argument always loses against the gingerbread house. This is how I see it.
Why?
Because you've got all these reasons that you've built up as your fortress of defense, and something comes along and it just shatters and it's like, no, I'm taking that instead.
So the birds come
And
down
that's how
and
it
eat the
works.
bread.
And you find that your fortress was made out of tinfoil.
I see.
Saint Michael, the archangel, who shouts, "Who is like God? Who is like God?" And that's all he says against the devil.
Yeah.
When the devil tempts him to leave God. He
Which
doesn't
is
make an argument. He just says, no.
It's a good thing to shout. Devil's like, do this, do that. You're going to be destroyed. You're going to be despairing. Who is like God? Who is like God?
That's faith, right?
That's
there.
faith. That's a powerful.
Not the argument.
No, it isn't. It is an argument. It's beyond the argument. And even to say that it's intuition in the feminine side is kind of wrong. I mean, I liken the Hansel and Gretel to the Kabbalistic idea of ayin and yesh in Jewish faith. I don't know how familiar you are with that.
I'm not extremely familiar with it now.
Well, in Kabbalistic thought in Jewish faith, which is the secret thought, that's what Kabbalah means, the secret thought. It doesn't mean Madonna's religion.
Madonna's a crazy old cat.
I feel very badly for her, I really do. My heart goes out to her. But anyway, in Kabbalistic thought, when God goes to create the world, he carves out an empty space in himself, in his side, called Zimzum. And in that empty space, in the divine infinite light, called Ein Sof, God pours a bit of himself in light to create something. So the Zimzum is the carving out of a hollow place in the side of the Ein Sof. By the way, parallels. Adam, rib taken out, Eve, Christ, stabbed in the side, church. They're parallels.
Okay.
But he pours a little bit of a light into himself, into the hollow space. And now you've got a hollow space of nothingness and light of somethingness. And the two exist simultaneously. And out of the something, not the nothing, the world is created. So God says, let there be light, and then he shapes that light into all the different forms over those 7 days until he finally results in the image and likeness of man. And man is a repeat, he's a what do you call it? Another form of the divine being that first created. Only he's made out of the light that's been poured into the empty space of nothingness. But in Jewish thought, nothingness and somethingness exist coincidentally with each other within the eternal Ein Sof. And they're called Ayin and Yesh. Ayin is nothingness, Yesh is something.
So that nothing is not really nothing.
Nothing is not evil. Nothing is not a... Nothing is not the nothing that we think of, because that's more like the Greek thing, the chaos pit, or like the Babylonian Tiamat dragon, the nothingness of that. This nothingness is more like a waiting or a pause or the silence before a song begins. That's what that is. You can't pour the song into a raging crowd. The song has to be poured into an empty cathedral. You see?
Yes, I do see.
Okay.
It's like a gourd is useful if it's empty.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a gourd.
Yes, right. The nothingness, the ayin, is similar to contemplation or waiting. It is intuition. It is darkness. It is the realm from which magic emerges. It is the realm from which life emerges, because light is the poured in stuff. It's the womb. And the something, the Yesh, is rational light, organizing things into order and packets. You know, the whole story of the 6 days of creation is an ordered creation. Is part of the point. It's a garden set out in 6 places. Everything's ordered and structured and all. Well, that's very Yesh. And that is similar to the feminine masculine that the Greeks talk about. There are these powers of feminine and masculine, of which woman and man are a reflection. Okay. So the all-consuming dragon is like the empty space, the ayin, out of control. It wants to devour all of the Yesh, and even goes so far as to devour the Ein Sof eventually. Now, of course, that's foolishness. It's about as dumb as building a giant tower to lay siege to heaven, as the guy Nimrod does in Genesis. But nevertheless, that's the desire of the all-consuming dragon. And psychologists talk about this as the all-consuming mother image. It is, but mother is an image or likeness, a representation of ayin. And in its best form, mother has to exist for the child to come into existence. Without mother, there is no child. So,
yes, and then there's no life very soon.
Yeah. So inside every human being, there is ayin and yesh. There is the waiting or the contemplation, emptiness. And there is the something, action, rational thought. And the two have to be balanced within us if we are going to actually do the job that's given to us, which is to tend the earth and take care of one another. When it gets out of control, the ayin wants to consume. When it gets out of control, the yesh wants to order until there's no more life. Okay, so both are life, they're contra life. They're the shadow forms of this whole Kabbalistic philosophy. Just as the ayin wants to devour everything as the dragon form, the yesh wants to have answers to everything until everything's sanitized. God's in a box. So in the Hansel and Gretel story,
the Freemasons try and do that all the time.
Oh gosh, yes.
Keep God in a box.
But we don't talk about that.
That's true, because all of a sudden you find yourself zapped out of the world.
That's right. That's right. So of these two powers, the worst is the Ayid. The all-consuming dragon is actually worse than the all-ordering father. Ragnarok is more dangerous than Odin, even though Odin has power. That image of over-mothering Grendel is worse than her son. By the way, that's a reference to Beowulf, and the other is a reference to Norse mythology for those who aren't following.
Yes, so, for people that don't know, the cat and I read quite a lot.
So when I'm not, sitting around looking at myself. So, sorry, off topic. So in the Hansel and Gretel story, it's every character in there is the same person. It's you or me. And so the difficulty there is that our Ayid, our young, feminine, contemplative self, has the potential for becoming the all-devouring dragon of the witch. And there's a transitional thing that has to be defeated, which is Other Mother. Other Mother is starving to death, and she forces the kids out into the woods. She actually dominates her rational man side. And she has to be defeated, just as the witch has to be defeated, because she is made home, not whole. So, how do we do that? We don't do it by rational argument. Hansel. And why would he? Because Daddy. Right. And Daddy has already been made innocuous. He's been emasculated. His bowels been cut off. By the way, did you see the thing? Hershey's tried to go woke and had a trans man celebrating Women's Month.
I have not seen that particularly with Hershey's, but I've seen it all over the place.
Yeah. But this
makes me think that apparently feminism can't get along without the patriarchy these days.
That's right.
What happened?
Men are better at being women than women are. No, but Hershey's tried to make an ad where a trans man was celebrating Women's Pride Month, whatever we call it, and they put a trans Hershey bar out for it. Now, they got so much blowback.
I'm not sure I want to eat a trans Hershey bar.
I don't think I'd put that in my mouth either. Let's keep this a family-rated program. They pulled it. Sorry, that's the wrong terminology. They removed it from shelves. And they also removed ads.
I wonder if they had to remove the shelf because they pulled it first.
No. Whatever the case, it was down very fast because the blowback was so huge. But one of the things that was done by Babylon Bee was that they came up with their own Hershey bar. His, him, and she, her. And the difference was that him, his has nuts.
That's very witty.
I thought it was great. So where was I going with all this?
I don't remember, but I think you really made your point about the danger of this devouring world.
Yeah, so the danger is really inside of us. The danger is that in us there is the temptation to devour everything. And that's motivated frequently by fear. We fear that we are not going to survive, and so we seize at the thing that might feed us. And that causes the road towards becoming the all-devourer. Now, that's a reference to Genesis for those of you who are bleak. The seizing of the apple is exactly the same story. But it's a story about what's inside of us. men, women, whatever. We all have the possibility of succumbing to the all-devouring dragon. And what happens when we succumb to it, we become the all-devouring dragon, and then pass that infection on to others by being equally depressing, demoralizing, emo, whatever you call it. We can't help ourselves. We have to see other people suffer, because as long as they're happy and they're joyful, we feel worse. We've crossed over the event
horizon. We feel as if the happiness is a commodity that is in limited quantities. If you have it, then it means I don't.
Even more, and this is even more terrifying to me, the all-devouring vision is like a black hole in the universe. And when we cross the Rubicon, the event horizon, we can't pull ourselves out of that anymore. And it's not even that we're just jealous of other people. Would that it were so simple. It's that we don't see an alternative. And so all happiness becomes fakery, illusion. And we know it. They don't. Because happiness and joy are an act of faith.
Yes.
Faith, happiness, joy, all that
having
stuff.
Faith that there will be a tomorrow.
Yes. And then I will be there to see it. Having faith, having joy, having happiness, they're all fakery to somebody who's gone past the event horizon. So Hansel and Gretel is like suggesting that we've got to arrest that movement before we get past the event horizon. We got to throw it back into the fire from which it came. Or if you take the Vasilisa story, we have to remind even it that the world is good, and they get kicked out with the burning skull on a post to take back to Other Mother so we can melt her. Because nothing stops your progression towards becoming the all-devouring dragon than the vision that you could become the all-devouring dragon. You know.
Well, there also comes a point, if you let yourself go down this path far enough, when you see that you're becoming the all-devouring dragon, at the last moment you embrace it.
Yeah, that's scary.
It is scary, but it is the last stage.
Yeah.
And then you're not yourself anymore ever again.
You're not. You're just a shadow.
The dragon takes you instead.
Yeah. You pass into the world of shadows, like ring wraiths, and that's a very terrifying.
In Norse mythology, I wonder if that's something like the Holder people. That by the time you die, you're just gray sod. That's all that's left of you.
Well, certainly. I mean, if
we're
all made of sod and nothing else, why not return to?
Well, that's what the Holder people make you into.
Yeah. By offering you bad food, right?
No, they offer delightful food and endless comfort. A beautiful woman that stays with you for your entire life. No difficulties. You just have to stay inside the Holder cave for the rest of your life.
Ha! A gingerbread house.
Yeah. And then when you die, you have no soul left.
Yeah. I wasn't using it anyway. I mean, yes, that's exactly the image. It's an image of no longer caring whether the sun rises or not, because we're sitting in the basement playing Risk of Rain.
Yeah. Checking the computer to find out whether or not it's raining today.
It is raining, isn't it?
Well, it's not raining where I am. It's snowing, but tomorrow should rain.
Well, you're on top of this building. And it's raining here, isn't it?
Oh, you're right. It is raining. I hadn't been looking at my computer screen.
Told you.
Sorry.
And so, I guess the long and the short of this is, religion is not just a flying spaghetti monster. It's not just children not being able to accept the harsh reality of life. I think of it far more as what Benedict XVI said in his introduction to Christianity. It's like a spar of a broken ship that allows you to survive the inundation. It's more like that.
Yes. He was an extremely wise man.
Yes, he was.
And yes, you will cling to your coffin in order to stay afloat if you have to.
After your boat gets staved in by a giant white whale?
Pretty much, because that happens. Sorry, this is a reference to something else.
Yes, because the giant white whale is your vision of goodness if you have gone past the event horizon, which Ahab has.
Yes. So he deliberately lets himself go down,
Yeah.
taken by the whale.
Yeah, because all he sees is this huge, lumpy mass of white flesh. He doesn't see the light of joy or the brightness of the Ein Saw.
No.
Just power.
No.
Gosh.
Power, pain, a world is cruel with a judgmental God that's going to get you.
There's a line out of that book that's just stuck with me. He says to Starbuck at one point, all the world is but painted masks, and I will stab through the mask at the heart of the beast. Isn't that terrifying?
Exactly what I was going to say. What a terrifying view of the world.
God. Really?
It's not true.
No, it
That's
isn't
the
true.
thing. The world is not just painted. It is an endless riot of beauty and life going on and on.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Cardinal, but it's a vision which has to be cultivated and nurtured in the soul, and was obviously not being nurtured terribly well in the 19th century. Melville's not the only one who spoke like this. You see this also in Edgar Allan Poe in his poem The Conquering Worm, or you see it in What I Saw of Shiloh by Ambrose Bierce. They were already struggling with this possibility in America, that really there was nothing more than just the machinations of some insane machine.
I would say that something has started to go very, very wrong at the end of the 18th century.
Yeah.
And it has been manifesting itself ever since.
Yeah. We talk about progress. We don't talk about regress.
Oh, progress is a word that causes me to laugh, ironically.
Yeah, doesn't it though?
Yes, we've made great progress.
Our progress.
Don't get me wrong, I like modern medicine and I like modern food.
Yeah, and modern
But we have not made progress as regards to the nature of mankind at all.
No, that's why Frankenstein was called the modern Prometheus.
That is, yes.
It's stealing fire from the fire rather than returning the witch to the fire.
You are, of course, referring to the book, not the movie.
Yeah, of course. The first printing of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is entitled The Modern Prometheus. And Prometheus is a reference to Greek mythology. He was a titan who stole fire from the gods in order to give to men in a fennel leaf. And really what it symbolizes, the attempt to seize the fire of technology.
Yes.
And here's that thought too. In order to really advance technology, especially as Mary Shelley thought, there has to be a preceding vision shift of the world. You know, as long as your job as a human being is in order to do the will of God and love other people and to fight the dragon of chaos, you're not going to try and invent a cotton gin or a steam locomotive. You know what I mean?
Yes, I actually do know what you mean. If you have let yourself accept that this world is to be wrapped up in neat little boxes and then you get what you want out of it, then you are going to assume that this is a world where you could animate dead bodies and think it a good thing.
Or alter the human body to anything you want it to be, whether it be another sex, or whether it is an animal, a human hybrid, or whether it's merging with machines like the Borg.
Yes, as we were talking about before, this is all one thing we've been discussing.
Yes.
And you say merging with the Borg is a good thing, because everybody's happy when they're merged.
Picard seemed to have been.
Yeah. Until he wasn't merged, and then he wasn't happy.
Yes, it goes back to that vision that Peter Singer has, or others, that we are ape-brained meat sacks.
No, we're not.
I know. I agree.
Okay.
But as long as we
Peter
think
Singer say that before. I could not disagree with Singer more.
I know. But he does represent a certain modern way of thinking about things, where human beings can be hacked, and we're all going to eat bugs and love it.
And we'll own nothing.
We'll own nothing. Right.
I certainly hope that is not the world that is ahead of us. You know what? When you've got the masters who are doing this to you, you've got to be like Gretel and play dumb for a long time.
I don't know nothing about birth and babies.
The masters make a mistake.
I don't know nothing about birth and babies. I don't know nothing about working a fire. I have no idea how this technology works. Really, I don't.
Nope. None.
I could never use a flux capacitor. Gordon.
Standard insertion for non-standard specimen.
Simply insert the specimen into the machine. Woohoo!
Did you know that there's a lot of people that don't even remember the Half-Life or the Portal series these days?
I know, it's
fallen
sad.
out of the cultural concept.
Kids these days, they don't even remember the classics. Deus Ex, Half-Life.
We're going to have to close this up soon.
Yep,
It has been good talking about this. And I do hope that anyone that does hear this walks away from the computer after listening to it and goes out and sees a truly beautiful world waiting for them.
Yes. I hope so too. And I hope that anything that we have said here has not been overly offensive to somebody's sensibilities, because sometimes your sensibilities have to be offended.
Or that happens.
Yes. Let me read one thing to close out here. You've heard, I'm sure, the poem by Walt Whitman, 19th century poet, called "When I Heard the Learned Astronomer."
Yes, I know this poem.
Okay.
Read it out.
This is by Walt Whitman. When I heard the learned astronomer. When I heard the learned astronomer, with the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me. When I was shown the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them. When I, sitting, heard the astronomer where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room. How soon unaccountable I became tired and sick, till rising and lighting out, I wandered off by myself, in mystical moist night air, and from time to time looked up in perfect silence at the stars. Go out and look at the stars in perfect silence, and realize, young people, and you, Cardinal, and myself, that we are all children of God. Good night, sir.
Good night. Love to you. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.